Right.
Yes.
Hi, friends. Hi, everyone. I am, just so super excited to be here today to get together with all of our partners and our friends, not only from here in the U.S., but really from around the world. So it has just been my pleasure to listen and learn from our colleagues, both in Canada and throughout Europe. And we are just super tickled pink to be able to share with you a little bit of the lessons we've learned along the way today as well. So I want to take a look at and talk to you a little bit about, today we're going to take a look at our central purpose. Our central purpose in the presence of lives of others is to nurture, to teach, and to sustain these experiences of connectedness, companionship, and community. What we've learned is that this thread is what binds us all together, regardless of the area of the world we come from, the population that we're called to serve, or if we're growing in our connections to others professionally or personally. We're going to be sharing our collective journeys on how the central purpose has impacted ourselves, our work, and the work of our teams that we support, as well as our organizations, and how it impacts our interactions with all the others around us as well. As this incredibly diverse and dynamic group began to work together, sharing our stories about a culture of gentleness, our stories just started pouring out of not only our souls, but our mouths as well. And I'm sure you're not surprised, especially if you know any one of us, that we started kind of interrupting and tripping on each other and laughing and being funny and having all these interruptions. And soon we felt like, oh my gosh, this opportunity that we have is getting away from us. We don't have any structure. What are we going to do? But there was a moment along that journey where it just became really clear to us that as our good friend and mentor, John McGee, had nudged and encouraged so many of us along the way, and those of you who are mentors in this community have nudged and encouraged others, really what we needed to do is just be brave and just tell a little story, right? That's how a lot of us started on this journey, was we were just encouraged to tell a little story. So today we invite you to listen to our collective journeys as we weave our own personal threads of sorrow with our threads of joy. And we talk about what we love the very most, which is this culture of gentleness and our central purpose. I'm Deirdre Mercer, for anyone that might not know me. I've recently moved to a related field of service. I have the privilege now moving from specifically mental health to working with individuals who experience housing insecurity or are currently homeless by providing support directly to their teams. After spending over 30 years in mental health support service and delivering, it's super humbling to bring my skills to an area where I have so much opportunity to learn and to grow. And I want to thank all of the folks I'm privileged to work with at Community Housing Network, not only for welcoming me, but for so generously sharing your passion and your commitment and love. I feel this support. I'm honored to share mine with you as well. And before we get started with our panel, there's a little dude that is often on all of these calls with us. He supports us. He does all of these things. He's super humble. You know him. You love him. It's Ed Kiefer. He often stands behind the scenes, and I want you to know how special and what a contribution to this community and today's presentation he is. Ed has been the yin to my yang in all of our trainings throughout the years. He's was formerly my work husband. He's one of my best friends in this world, and he is a best friend and a supporter to so many of you. So I just want to give Ed a personal shout out, and I don't want to forget our buddy Shane. He's also here quietly supporting us and nurturing us through this. Shane has supported and served individuals with disabilities for many, many years, and now is able to support folks behind the scenes as well in the training department at MORC. So thank you, gentlemen, for keeping us strong.
Thank you, Dee.
You're welcome. All right. Well, right now we're going to start off with my friend Tracy Malk. Tracy is from Kansas City, Missouri. She's worked with people with disabilities for over 30 years. She was introduced to people, supporting people for the first time, working as a direct care professional. She was completely hooked. She completed her bachelor's degree with her plans to continue this work. She's worked in so many different positions, always wanting to work a job where she can make a positive impact for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. She is currently working as an agency relations supervisor at ETAS, where she's worked for 15 years. ETAS provides support, coordination, transportation, training, and grant funding to agencies that support people with disabilities. And with that, I invite Tracy to share a little bit about her journey in a culture of gentleness, the central purpose, and how it relates to ourselves.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Tracy Malk. I wanted to tell my personal story. I came to gentle teaching by luck, by accident. When I came to work at ETAS, I just had the opportunity to meet John McGee for the first time. I learned about gentle teaching, and I really at that time thought I would be helping people with disabilities. And I wasn't sure how. I just knew that everything else that I had been taught in this field and supporting people with disabilities, it just didn't make a lot of sense. We were trying to correct behavior when it was obvious people's hearts were broken. So in that process, I was lucky to spend a week every month for a few years with John and having him mentor and guide me. During work hours, I was on. I knew my approach for gentleness. But I had something happening at home that I just didn't know what to do about. And so when John had been here for maybe a year, and my son probably was 7 or 8 at the time, and I felt like the luckiest mom in the world. He's so happy and boisterous and fun. But when he got into the 2nd, 3rd, and then 4th grade, I was the worst mom ever. I felt like I had done everything wrong. He was getting notes at home. I was getting calls from the school. He was bouncing off the wall, running around the class. And at that time, when they ask you to sit down and really start to focus on schoolwork, he just couldn't do it. And I didn't know at the time that he had ADHD. I just knew I wasn't doing something right. I was sure it was me. So the more I felt that it was me, the more upset and frustrated I got. I became the mom that was kind of my worst nightmare. I was never going to yell at my kids, and yet I was so impatient and so upset and frustrated that I did yell at my kids. And then one day I finally told my dark secret to John McGee and said, I don't know what to do. And at the time I was still thinking, what do I need to do to fix my son? And John just said a simple thing, and now it sounds so simple, and why didn't I think of that? But he asked me what he likes to do, and I said, well, he likes to play video games. And he said, just play video games with him. And of course, he wasn't just telling me to play video games with him. He was telling me to accept him for who he was, to enjoy the moment, to be there and have fun, and stop with so much pressure on myself and with him to be perfect. And through that, you know, it was hard at first. Personal change is hard. And I think for most of the people that have come to gentle teaching, it sounds like such an easy concept, but when you're actually talking about your own personal growth, there's work to be done. And anyone who says there's not is not doesn't understand gentle teaching. It's something that I still learn every day, but I see my son as being one of my greatest mentors. And so each day we spent a little time playing video games. I started walking away when I was frustrated. I started thinking about how can I use my tools, my hands, my eyes, my words, my presence to make that little boy know how much his mom loves him. And that was my purpose. That was my sole purpose. And things did get better. Not always. Some things were hard, but I think that experience with my son and the closeness that we now feel for each other, and later the support I was able to provide my daughter as she grew and needed support too in other ways. It changed the very path of my life. and the path of my children's lives. So I find that I have a special place in my heart for parents. I think the parents, especially here in the United States, when you have a child with a disability, you fight for everything. You have to fight for every little thing for your kid. By the time they get to adult services, sometimes those parents are a little bit rough around the edges. They're tired, they're exhausted. They feel like they still have to fight. And so what I bring to this is the concept of meeting the parents as they're the ones that need to feel safe and loved. They're the people that need unconditional love and acceptance. And the only way that we can help them is by building a relationship with them. So usually in training, when the one person raises their hand and says, I have this really difficult parent, what do I do? My advice usually is that's the person you need to spend the most time with. That's the one that you need to figure out, how am I going to use my tools to help this mom feel safe with me and cared about by me. And so to me, that I think that's the most critical thing, that we make sure that we give grace to families and parents, and we're there for them, regardless of what maybe has happened in the past. How do we honor parents in the eyes of their children? What do we do to keep them at the forefront of the person's life? And so that's my passion, and I just something I really felt like I wanted to share with you today. So thank you.
Tracy, thank you so much. I want to not put you on the spot, but maybe ask you a little question too, or talk to you a little bit about like what you feel about this. So I heard you presenting, your story. And first of all, I want to give your son big props for representing the Michigan area here, like Greta Van Fleet, like what up? They're just from the north here of me in Michigan. And I could tell you a funny story about that one day. But anyway, awesome. I digress. But when you were telling like such a passionate and good story, beautiful story about your vulnerability and that notion of kind of opening up and talking about how difficult this path and this journey can be personally for you as a parent, what I heard you talking about is when we talk in our central purpose about that notion of that we nurture, teach, and sustain that experience of connectedness, companionship, and community. What I hear you saying is it wasn't about playing video games. It was sitting on the urge that we as parents and as caregivers often do, is that urge to teach versus understanding the need to nurture, right? And so I really feel like the story you're telling about your son and what you're talking about and doing with families when you're talking about parents is oftentimes as professionals, we encounter an individual we support, we encounter family members, we encounter people, and we feel like we need to tell them all the things that we as the professional or the person knows. And so I think the same thing is true. You're talking about sitting on the urge to teach or to share that knowledge with another person and reflect back and think, in this moment, I need to nurture, I need to build that relationship, I need to help that person feel safe. And I think that's so impactful and meaningful.
And I think knowing your own personal story is helpful. So when you're building that relationship and just nurturing that family, being willing to be vulnerable and put yourself out there so that they understand we're all in this world figuring it all out together. And life can be hard, and this can be a hard thing that we're trying to do. So I definitely think that that families need that from us.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Next, we're going to hear from a new friend to me. Her name is Elianora Magri. She is a board certified behavior analyst. She works as an independent practitioner and consultant, creating connections and resources for individuals and their families and their communities. She approaches her work as small things with great love and has a special interest in neurodiversity. growing up in Italy, living for 10 years in Puerto Rico, and now residing with her family in California. Hey, wait a second. You told me you lived in Maine. I'm just kidding. Elianora continues to be inspired by how a child can grow in their awareness of themselves and their own place in the world. Inclusi is her newly formed organization that is bringing businesses and communities together with shared resources in support of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families through a gentle teaching and multi-sensory environment framework. I cannot wait to get out to California and meet you face to face, because you are an amazing person and I can't wait to hear your story.
Well, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Elianora, and like you heard, I've been trained and practiced in the field of ABA for a long time. And, you know, my story about meeting gentle teaching is, it's an interesting one because, you know, I've implemented ABA and teaching strategies, right? And although some of them made sense for me in their application, I always felt intuitively that was something was missing, right? And so I am working with families, graduating kids after X many years from this ABA program. My question have always been, well, what is the lasting impact? Am I really truly improving their quality of life for the long term? Or am I just attempting to modify and control things temporarily in the surface, right? And so I had many questions, and you know, I know when I started looking into what type of profession I can do to help others, right? It was not for changing anyone's unique expression of life, but I wanted to add value and meaning to their unique lives. And so my question was I really doing this, right? And I could answer yes to some families, but I knew that there were many others that I couldn't answer yes, and that made me extremely uneasy, right? Extremely uneasy, and so I almost felt like I lost my purpose in my role as a professional, and so I felt like I had to take a step back and really look at, you know, seek more answers, and sometimes I think the day-to-day of a demanding job can kind of blur your vision. And so I said, you know, I'm going to need to research. I need to take a deeper look at what really is my scope of practice and service delivery. And we can jump to the next slide if you want. And so I found my answers in gentle teaching. You know, it was this feeling like returning home after a long journey. It just made sense. I intuitively knew that the framework of approaching and really giving us time to develop that relationship with the people that we serve needed to be at the foremost of what we do as a treatment. And now I felt like I had this framework that I could refer to, and I could also have a lot of mentors and professionals that I could consult with. And so I just started embracing it, looking at building relationship and offering an invitation to the people I work with, of feeling safe and loved unconditionally, regardless of the moment, right? Even in the moments of frustration and fear. We can go to the next slide real quick too. And so I kind of let myself, again, allow the relationship develop and guide the treatment, other than the other way around, where sometimes I felt where the treatment was guiding the relationship. And the most beautiful thing happened working with my students, my friends. I felt that it was not only I was adding value to their life, but I felt it was a process of a self-discovery, right? For me, at a personal level, at a professional level, because it truly allowed me to discover who I am and really require me to be at the best of myself, the best version of myself in every given moment, right? Fully present, engaged with my eyes, with my words, invested in this relationship. And also at the same time highlighted to me that if I don't take care of myself as a professional, that I cannot really give the best to the people that I serve. It also challenged my creativity because a lot of the work that I do is through a Zoom platform. And so it's sometimes very hard to connect with individuals through a screen. Again, that was a good challenge to have and provide that invitation to others. We can move to the next slides as well. And the next one as well too. I was talking a little bit too fast. And then let me tell you just like a little story about, if you're going to go to the next slide as well, of my friend Ian. He's an 11-year-old autistic boy, and he's a brilliant storyteller. He loves baby dolls and history and French fries and goldfishes. He also has severe anxiety and fear of insects and dogs and a history of child abuse. And he's really confined to his house because he cannot go out in the community. And so I am meeting with him through the Zoom platform. And really the first 4 months of attempting to work with him was really staring at a black screen, a lot of no-shows, sometimes just screaming and shutting his laptop. And I had a conversation with the special ed director, and he said, you know, there's so many no-shows, I don't think there's any place to really do much here. And so I said, you know, I want to give it a try. I want to keep showing up. I feel like if I don't show up, it's like giving up on this boy and on the relationship. And so I started talking to mom and say, you know, let me know what is it like to be home? What are some things that he plays with? What are some things that he engages with? And here she shared, you know, he loves baby dolls. And so here I gather all the baby dolls from my kids and stuffed animals, and I just pretty much did a lot of talking to myself to a back screen for quite some time. And one day, Ian just decided to turn on his camera and said, "Hey, this is Wally." And I said, "Hi, Wally." And we started, you know, engaging and talking. And to his day, he does still talk a lot through Wally in the ways that he experiences the world and the fears. And eventually, we were able to share about different emotions and talk about the fear of my baby dolls. And so he felt more comfortable talking about the fear of his baby dolls. And eventually we got to talk about dogs and how he doesn't want to go out or leave his home because he's afraid of them. And through pretty much already almost like 2 years that we are working together, one day mom sends me a picture and said, "Ian wanted me to show you this." And it's a picture of Ian pretty much sitting 5 feet apart from the neighbor's dog. And she said, "What happened?" You know? And so I think there's just no words, right, to describe this. I think this is the power of gentle teaching. And I think now I have this new lens, this new pair of glasses, which I think really blends in well to you know, some of the training and other methodologies that I've learned, and it blends really well in establishing this foundation of relationship building with others. Thank you so much.
Beautiful, Elianora. I mean, just beautiful. I'm getting messages from folks that haven't been as familiar with gentle teaching as we have along the way, some new friends. I didn't know you were going to make me cry today. But this is, you know, when we talk about a culture of gentleness and we talk about this story, and we talk about the central purpose, right? It really is about changing ourselves versus changing the other. And I love how that your story highlighted, you had said so many things that I wrote down, like let the relationship be the guide instead of trying to guide the relationship, right? Like you need to sit with the person. You have to see where the person's at. The imagery that is created of you talking to a blank screen for so many days. Like I have tears just thinking about the commitment and the devotion to a person that you did not yet know. And just knowing that the journey, not knowing where it was going to end up, just that kind of trust that you have in that journey is so important. Also, the essential purpose is very much, and gentle teaching is very much about who we are as we enter into that space with another person. And so you making sure that you are at your best version of yourself, because at the end of the day, the only person in that relationship with you and Ian that you could control was you, right? So many aspects of your story just resonate with every single thread of gentle teaching. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add or share, because I know I talk too much and I didn't really ask you a question. I have so many thoughts on what you shared with us.
I think what has been really great, it's also, just connecting with all of you guys. You've been so welcoming, even if, maybe my background is a little bit, is different, but just, again, I think it speaks so much to this whole framework of gentle teaching, right? You just welcome, and I feel very blessed to be connected with all of you. So thank you again.
Well, I'll give you a little insight. Your new friend, Jen, that you met, and we'll hear from in a little bit, she coined a term for the new glasses that you're wearing. We actually call them coggles. They're Culture of Gentleness goggles. So they're called coggles. That's our fun word that we like to use. So now you have a word to go along with your new glasses that you're wearing.
I love it. I love it.
Beautiful. We're going to move and meet two other of our friends whose primary focus with us today is going to share a bit about our essential purpose and a culture of gentleness and how it relates to our caregivers, our teams, our organizations. All right. And so first up, I want to share with you my friend, Dr. Charles Woodard. He is a forensic examiner, mentor, certified gentle teacher who's worked with individuals with special needs at the Midland Center in Columbia, South Carolina. He worked at this facility as the director of Mentally Retarded Offenders Program, and then ultimately as the chief psychologist and director of psychological services. In 2002, he left and was inspired to start Seed Consultation Services. His educational training, varied work experiences, as well as life experiences have given him knowledge and preparation for the purpose of sowing seeds of empowerment, knowledge, and success in others. He has authored the book Self-Talk, Sign of Sanity, Insanity, or the Key to Self-Empowerment. Self-talk takes a realistic look at how personal and individual feelings are formed. In fact, monitoring and changing one's self-talk are keys to self-control. And I am so excited because I just love listening to you share your story and your journey. So we are privileged to have you with us today.
Thank you, Deidre. And hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to speak with you this afternoon. And I'm going to talk to you about love and your love tank. After you hear this, you will be empowered to love at will. And it's going to be easy. Feelings. And in gentle teaching, we do talk about love. And in order to give something, you have to have it inside of you. And I'm going to talk with you about how to put it in and keep it in, so that you can continually share love with others. First of all, let's talk about feelings and emotions and how they come about. And we've heard people talk about feelings already, but I want you to understand that feelings are determined by what you say to yourself about situations, people, circumstances, conditions. Whatever you say to yourself determines how you feel about a person. Now, that's kind of contrary to what a lot of people have learned in the past, because they believe that other people make them feel a certain way. And, us married people can say, my spouse makes me sick, makes me mad, my children make me this and that. No, you make yourself feel the way you feel based on what you're saying to yourself about what that person said or about what that person did. So feelings are determined by you. Now, when you have a feel love tank, what does that mean? It means that you are empowered to put relationships at the forefront, and that involves recognizing other people, respecting their individuality, and being committed to the ongoing process of being in a relationship. Great. So now, how does one fill the love tank? First, you start by saying good and positive things to yourself. Get up in the morning, look in the mirror, and you say, wow, well, you look great today. You're good looking, you're smart, you're compassionate, you got it going on. And what that does, it makes you feel good based on what you just said to yourself. Now, that's why it's important that you do that, because that's what fills your love tank. No one else can fill your love tank except you. Understand that only you can do that. People can try, but if you don't accept what they're saying, it's not going to work. But you have to say it yourself for yourself. Love yourself. Be good to yourself. Be gentle to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be respectful of yourself. All of these things go towards filling that love tank and keeping it filled up. You kind of know when it's low when you go to work and client come in and you say to yourself, oh no, I thought they were going to stay home. They're here again today. Oh man, your love tank is getting a little bit low. All right, so that gives you a clue. Now we talk about gentle teaching, and as gentle teachers, and that's what we become, we look at the tools. Our word now will focus on positiveness, helping the other person feel safe, feel loved. And also you'll be able to speak slowly, quietly, warmly. You'll be able to uplift and to nurture. Your presence, that's your overall way of communicating with others. The way you look at a person, the way you move with that person, the warmth in your eyes, the sense of soothing, uplifting, and comforting, and non-demand that you give to others. All benefits of having that full love tank. Your eyes, you can now look into that person's heart. You just don't look at the outside of that person and determined. You look inside that person's heart. That enables you to see where they are, make that connection, and then you can move forward. The touch. Now you can touch a person warmly, and you can let them know that your hands are symbols of love and that they're saved and loved by you and with you. Now, what are the benefits of having this field love tank? Let me just address that for a few minutes. As mentioned previously, it allows you to show respect, love, caring towards others. It also allows you to express what we call unconditional love. And that's GT all the way. It doesn't matter how they treat you. It doesn't matter what they say to you. You still show love towards them anyway. And it also enables you to withstand verbal insults, emotional attacks, even physical attacks. I like to say, because you feel good about you and you know who you are, you love you, it doesn't matter what another person says. It's not going to upset you. It's not going to make you mad. It's like pouring water on a duck's back. Those words just rolls right off because you know who you are, and that's not you. So now you can still focus on the needs of that person and work on developing and maintaining a good relationship with that person. A love tank filled up allows you to have good self-control and also to be less stressed. I dare say stress-free. I like to say stress is in the eyes of the beholder. Why? Because what stresses you may not stresses me. All right? It enables you to be a part of the solution and not part of the problem, which is what we want to have happen. Also, a full love tank enables you to nurture your own self, to promote and model positive social interactions that assists others in cooperating, participating, building, and maintaining better relationships. Now, the beauty of a field love tank is that in working with others, while you feel good about yourself, you stay positive, you maintain self-control, you manage stress, practice building relationships, you are also modeling to others and building practices for them. You're teaching them how to also do the same thing that you're doing. That's one of the beauties of a field love tank. And I just want you to be reminded that developing the happiness habit, it does require practice. You have to be consistent. Keep making positive self-statements. That's what keeps your love tank filled. And your feelings as a result will be happy, optimistic, positive, and enthusiastic. So be empowered. Monitor what you're saying to yourself, because that's what controls how you feel. Keep that love tank full, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles, so much. You know, while you're talking, I couldn't help but think about the fact that I wish that we could wear, like I wish we had gauges like our cars do, right? Like, so when you walk in the door, your loved one could look at you and be like, oh, like low fuel, right? Like,
Yes.
so what do I have to do? Like, I have to increase those positive interactions, right, to get her tank filled up, or what do I need to do? Like, I need to know that I'm got low fuel. So where do I need to go fill up my tank a little bit, right? And so that I'm available to be kind, as we like to say in my family, right? Because we're not available for those things when our tank is running on fumes or running on empty. So I just love the way that you make sure that we as caregivers and nurturers and social workers and folks that reach out to others, when we're in service of others, whether that be in our personal and or professional life, it is not selfish to think about what we need to do for ourselves in order to stay full. Because our vehicle of love, our vehicle of support, our vehicle of compassion will not go anywhere if it's out of gas, right?
That's
we won't be able to serve anyone. And you just make that so clear. You take something that I think often many of us think is unhealthy for us, like I've got to serve all the people. You take something that we would say is bad and you tell us, no, this is exactly what we need to do in order to continue that journey and serve others. So your message that you share with others and all of the tools that you supply people to make sure they have the tools, because it's so easy to say love yourself, but I know we also have to learn, and not all of us have learned where to gain those tools in order to healthily love ourselves and keep our tanks full.
Absolutely. You said it in a nutshell.
Well, I would listen to you in a bag of nutshells for sure.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
You.
It's so good to chat with you. Thank you so much. Moving on, when we're talking about our teams and organizations, I get teary-eyed thinking of introducing this woman to the group here, because I could read you her bio, and I certainly will for those of you that don't know her in the way that I do. But Kim is a mentor of mine. She is a friend. She has been a partner along this journey for many, many years. I miss the snot out of you. For anyone that knows what I really want to say, I'm trying hard to keep it clean here today. But Kim Junti is the director of MORC training. She began working in behavioral health, supporting people with complex needs in starting her career as a caregiver in a group home for those with complex medical and behavioral needs, taught her the importance of building safe and trusting relationships and supporting others. It provided her the valuable insight to the incredible role of care professionals and how they develop and sustain quality of life for people who are marginalized by society. In her current role as the director at MORC, Kim finds herself advocating and ensuring that all who attend training feel a deep sense of value and appreciation. We are driven to empower, mentor, and educate today's direct service professionals in providing exceptional care to those we serve through high-quality interactive training. She works on a ton of state and local committees to address systemic issues facing behavioral health and the workforce that provides support. She never will take for granted the opportunities that she's had to mentor others in this field. And one of her favorite quotes is, "When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid," by Audre Lorde. When she's not working, she loves gardening, fishing, cooking, and some awesome music. Welcome, Kim. Unmute yourself, sister, especially if you just said something really nice about me.
That was the smartest part of my presentation, people. And sorry. No, I was just saying, what a bucket tank filling, afternoon it's been. I've been missing talking about gentle teaching. So I'm going to share a little bit about what goes into keeping our team supported in a culture of gentleness. I've been a leader for a while, and in some of those years, I think I did a really good job, and in other years, maybe not such a good job. Like many of you have said, I think becoming a good caregiver is a lifelong endeavor, and every year I learn a new lesson that just solidifies some of these key principles. Dee, I want to thank you for starting off with that central purpose, because it was where we found ourselves starting off about 2 years ago, when COVID kind of hit. And within short order, we were asked to leave our offices and transition to a virtual kind of reality, if you will, without a lot of transition. And man, it kind of shook us for a while, like we thought, what is this? Or we're going to be done with this in a couple months. So then we'll be right back to the office. And as the months ticked away, we really had no idea when reality was going to restore itself. And here we are 2 years later, and reality just has a different look. But Ed Kiefer and I had an early conversation. This is my beautiful team right here. And I know lots of folks say this, I have the best team in the whole world. I love each and every one of these unique individuals. But Ed and I found ourselves, just having an early conversation going, wow, what do we do? Our curriculum was mostly instructor-led. We needed to transition relatively quickly to some sort of virtual format. And we knew that getting that going as soon as possible was essential, because we had to keep trained caregivers kind of out there supporting our folks. And so we had an early conversation, and like we do so many times, we went back to that central purpose, which is to nurture, teach, and sustain this experience of companionship, connectedness, and community. And we thought, how are we going to do this in our new reality where we're seeing each other over a screen? And we made the early commitment that we would meet with the team every single morning, and that we really would need to be cognizant of 6 key elements that we've trained others on for many, many years, but that these 6 key elements were really, we were going to have to use these strategies to be really intentional about how we kept this team supported. If you'll show the next slide, I'll just talk real briefly about these 6 elements, because for some of you, this might be a new concept, but in a culture of gentleness that we train here in Michigan, we really kind of focus in on what we call these 6 key elements. And that first one is really addressing the feelings that we can create as leaders with our team members. And first and foremost is this foundation of people feeling incredibly safe, right? Physically, emotionally, as well as deeply loved and valued. this change kind of rocked our foundation. You know, are we going to work from home? What's my job going to look like? Am I going to know how to do this job? There was a lot of uncertainty, and we really had to work on that nurture part of the central purpose. It meant that, you know, all energy was going to be into just checking in on people and creating this safe environment where we could come together every day, even for a short time, and really feel safe sharing what our worries were, what our fears were. Many of us throughout COVID would experience these days where sometimes we'd be so filled or overwhelmed with anxiety, or we might be just stymied by a to-do list, yet we couldn't collect our thoughts and get focused on what needed to be done in front of us. And by creating this environment where we made it safe to talk about it, where we shared what we were experiencing during this time, really allowed us to understand that we were all experiencing kind of the same things. And it gave us sometimes the only place that we had to talk about what we were feeling. Then we had to start looking at how can we increase those positive interactions? And again, meeting every morning really helped us kind of fill that love tank, as Charles was talking about, to fill our buckets. And this is really the action step of these 6 elements. It's the things that we can do. We can be real intentional about talking about how much people mean to us, how we're going to get through this together, how we'll work it out, celebrating the unique talents and gifts and contributions of each team member was really, really important. And then we had to take a look at that list of demands that was before us. This team was so remarkable in that we had to figure out not only how to design some things virtually, right, but how to research them, how to develop them, how to make them ADA compliant, some accelerated skill sets that we didn't possess initially going in, but we needed them relatively quickly. It was just remarkable, you know, when we could provide this foundation for folks and people began to feel safe that they were able to bring their very, very best to the table. And we all have learned some things over the last couple of years. And I don't think any of us could have done it individually, but when we brought this team together on an equal playing field, we were able to support each other through almost anything throughout this transition. I want to talk to you now about those last 2 elements, and this really went into the planning. What type of structure could we put together, and what kind of strategies could we develop for these transitions that seem to be rolling in every day? Well, one piece of that structure was our commitment to meet every single day. We kept lists of the projects we were working on and where we were at. People would chime in to say, I can research that for you. I can help figure that out. I think if we work together, we can solve this problem. And knowing that the next morning we would meet to kind of share that, you know, in the joy of what we had overcome, and also, you know, build that support that we needed for the next transition. We were able to sometimes look at transitions ahead of time, and sometimes over the year they came in so fast that we had little time to prepare for them. But when we could anticipate those transitions, we could use what we learned previously, and it made the next transition seem a little less frightening or a little less unknown to us. And it really, I think, has been these 6 elements that has really been so essential in kind of being a part of this team over the last 2 years in particular. In addition to what we had to do work-wise, we also were really grappling with just the state of affairs. Not only did we have COVID, but we had civil unrest. We had hatred and racism rising, negativity, changes in work routines, changes in fear and anxiety about what we were seeing on the news, and is this what we were becoming as a society and as a gentle community. It was hard for us, and we all struggled with it differently on different days, but we would talk about some of those things that were happening in our community and our nation with our neighbors, and try to make some sense of it. And it really just it helped us resolve the fact that gentleness is needed now more than ever. What I do know, whether I agree with your politics or disagree, is that we are all searching for a place to feel like we've been heard, we've been valued, and that we have an opportunity to contribute our unique gifts and talents to the, to the well-being of society as a whole. One thing we miss terribly, and I have to say that we still miss, is the energy and the life that being with caregivers every day provided to us. And we still miss that dreadfully. Going to a virtual world, made it easier for our providers, but man, we miss those caregivers. We miss hearing about what the hard things are for them, and talking about their daily struggles. So we're hoping we can get back to more and more blended conversations and reaching out, because they really are, they are our champions, right? Because if we're not serving them well, they can't serve the people that we support well. But listen, I am so incredibly proud of this team. I hope that if you're in a position where you're leading others, that you really think about these 6 elements. Start having conversations with your team members to say, where can we build? Where can we get some strength? Because not only will it bring people together when there's a heavy lift, but I think we'll see the very, very best work that we've ever seen out of people. I mean, that is the foundation to bring out the creativity that we need to make necessary changes within the systems of care that we have. That's where the answer lies. And as leaders, we've got to create that environment where people's needs are being met and they can bring their very, very best selves to the table. So, so really that's my story. And I think how we lead teams and how we support teams through the most trying of times will teach us lessons that we'll be able to transfer to all kinds of different environments.
Kim, well, in our chat is our friend Barb that we just adore. And she's saying, I love it when people practice what they preach. And I can speak on behalf of the folks that I was privileged to serve, especially before at the very beginning of this pandemic, that you and Ed, of course, Shane as well, in particular, truly practiced exactly what you preach. Not only did you change the nature of the way that training was developed, you made sure to host conversations where caregivers would have a place to tell their story. It's difficult for me to talk about it without even crying, because it was such a scary and lonely time. For so many people, that not only did you take those critical trainings that the individuals we were serving needed, such as making sure our medications, shout out to Casey for doing an amazing job on making sure that our caregivers continue to get trained in medications, and your nurses talked to them kindly and sweetly and supported them all the way through learning how to do those live demonstrations. But you also offered a forum of people that provided trauma-informed support and care and a place to share those feelings. And so never underestimate the work that you and your team have given all of us as well. We deeply, deeply appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dee.
All right. Okay, let me gather myself together. For those of you who know me, I love to say my heart leaks out my eyes. So sorry, my heart is right here with you, my friends. I'm going to introduce some of you may already know my friend Sheldon Schwiddick. He brings more than 30 years experience supporting people who experience disability. And it began with the birth of his youngest brother when he was 13 years old. With the firm grounding in person-centered work and through long association with Inclusion Press and the Toronto Summer Institute, Sheldon's focus has always been on encouraging people to dream bigger as a pathway to true citizenship. He is passionate about people living meaningful lives and having a contribution in their communities. Sheldon is well-versed in areas of independent facilitation, self-determination, community living, person and family-centered planning, person-centered thinking, and he's a trained facilitator in multiple facilitation modalities, including MAPS, PATH, essential lifestyles planning, solution circles, and many more. In 2011, Sheldon began working with the Center for Positive Living Support, shout out CPLS, and their implementation of a culture of gentleness throughout Michigan. This work solidified his knowledge that relationships and community connections are fundamental to a safe and happy life. Lately, Sheldon's been working nationally and internationally, weaving together, I see what you did there, weaving together his experience in person-centered work and mentorship as exemplary tools to assist people to realize full potential as citizens. The key message in Sheldon's work is that people can live lives that are rich and meaningful, and that this is our most important work. He continues to find ways to deepen his practice and understanding of this work. Most recently, Sheldon became the executive director at the Art Community Advocates in Kalamazoo, Michigan, in a community that is committed to social justice for all. And I'm super excited to chat with our friend Sheldon.
Thanks, Dee. I've been wanting to tell this story, and I'm trying to figure out where to start because it's a long story. Before I worked for the center, actually, one of the first times that I met Kim Junti, I was working at a group home that supported 6 different people, and I always introduced that group home as a pretty high needs medical home, and 2 people who had behavior plans and somebody else who probably should have had a behavior plan, and everyone needing pretty full-on support, which was a completely new experience for me when I started that. I hadn't worked in a group home setting ever in my life. And through that work, I actually met my friend George, and I can honestly call him my friend. He's someone who was supported. He was one of those people who actually had a behavior plan. And often, like most behavior plans, extinction or just leaving people alone was the word of the day, something that I never felt was really appropriate in the ways in which we think about how to support people, because I'm just relational in the ways that I think and feel. So Ed, if you want to put up that first slide of him. So this is me in my office, and George coming in to visit me. He is probably one of the funniest people I know. He doesn't have a lot of language, certainly knows how to say please and thank you, has a couple of words, wants to have his shoe put on. And the biggest thing he says is he wants to go bye-bye. He always wants to go somewhere, always wants to be moving. So here he's actually just making a phone call or pretending to make a phone call, as he would usually try and do. But as I got to know George, I got to know a lot of things about him. And one of them was that he really loved cars and loved race cars in particular. So it turned out that I had a good friend who was an enduro driver at the local Kalamazoo Speedway, and they invited me to go. And as I always say, I could give a shit about cars and racing and any of that. But because my friend George wanted to go, and because I was invited by other friends, we showed up. And this is actually we've already been a couple of times. The first day that we showed up for that race, though, my friend Wayne was in the race, and we no sooner had pulled up to the bleachers where my friends were sitting, and these 3 beautiful young women came running down, and one of them just wrapped their arms around G and gave him a big old hug. And I was kind of surprised, but then turned out that I realized that my friend Wayne's daughter actually worked at the day program that George went to on a regular basis. And so it was interesting already to see that there were these connections that he had to, and we live in a small community in Kalamazoo, so the connections are small. Lots of people know George, lots of people know me, and it was only a matter of time before those 2 things crossed. But like I said, he also was somebody who had a plan, a behavior plan, because often he wasn't really well understood. And most of my work was spent really helping people find ways to understand who G was. And so through my time in supporting him, I often would spend a lot of time just coaching people on spending time being with him, right? Often in his plan, it was written that he was supposed to have 15-minute checks done on him, which I still find hard to believe, because I don't know that I could leave anybody under my care alone for 15 minutes if I was working in a group home, even if it was checking on them by listening at their bedroom door to see that everything was okay. But the reason it was written was that people would leave G for long periods of time and then burst into his room and say, all right, time to get changed, or it's time to go for dinner, and it's time to get on the bus, and no transition. So if we think back to the 6 elements that Kim was talking about, the structure for George was really lacking. And so one of the things I started to implement was modeling to the rest of the staff, because at that point I was still only, quote unquote, only a direct support professional, and tried to just lead them by example of like that relationship is key, structure is key, and that transition is really important. And none of us actually want to be rushed to be going about and doing everything. Some of the other things I learned about G was that he was actually a really amazing, loved music, country music in particular. And I can remember looking in the backseat of the van, bringing him home from that day program one day and having him rock out to the Avett Brothers. And so I found out that, and not too many, this was before the Avett Brothers were very big. I had seen them once in a small show in Grand Rapids and really loved them, but turned out that they were coming to Chicago and playing at the Hard Rock Cafe. So G was also one of those people who usually had to spend some money. So I figured, well, what better way to spend some money than to go to a rock concert? So G and myself and 2 other people and 2 other staff actually went to the Hard Rock Cafe to see the Avett Brothers. And the part of that story for me is that I trusted G and he trusted me. It was really easy to be with him. And he always managed to make a friend. He used to, like, for those of you who can see my camera, he would put his finger out and he'd say mirror and get people to come and talk to him. And so we were sitting beside another young man who was physically disabled, was in a wheelchair, and a friend of his. And the guy had set his beer down pretty close to G, and G doesn't really like beer, and there's no reason that he couldn't have any, but he immediately picked up the guy's cup and tried to drink some of it, right? And then turned his face, and I apologized profusely. I was feeling really bad. I was feeling unsafe. This guy was gonna freak out or whatever. Offered to buy him a beer. He's like, oh no, that's okay. He said, obviously he doesn't like it, but we're happy to buy you another beer. He's like, no, that's okay, I'll get one. What does he want instead? And I said, he would take a Coke. So the guy ended up buying G a Coke so that he could sit there and watch and enjoy the show from the balcony. And the reason I tell all of these stories is that it was really about relationship. And I started doing this work with the Center for Positive Living Supports by becoming a trainer for the organization that I was working for. And I started to implement all the things that we were talking about and the language around the 6 elements. How do we make sure that people feel safe and supported? How do we make sure that there is some structure in their lives? How do we make sure that they're getting way more positive feedback than they are demands and putting pressure on them? And so I worked at that home as a direct support professional. I was a supervisor for a while. That really helped me to solidify some of my understanding about who G was, but also solidified our friendship. And in the last year, the last couple of years, it's been impossible to go see him. He lives about 6 blocks away from me. And not long after I became the supervisor, I got a call from the home saying that G had gotten sick, but he wouldn't let anybody help him. He'd thrown up all over his bedroom floor, got so mad that he threw himself out of his chair, wouldn't get back in his chair, and wouldn't let anybody do anything. And they said, we just don't know what to do. And we were going to call the on-call, but we thought we'd call you first. So of course it was in the evening. It was pretty early. I went down and just modeled to people, what does it take to support you? I'm like, oh my God, man, you must feel really terrible. This looks really uncomfortable. How about if we get you up out of your chair, into your chair, and get you cleaned up, and we can get all of this cleaned up. And he let me help him. But I approached it not from like, I'm worried or scared, but more I'm understanding where he was from, like making sure that he felt safe and supported at the same time. And staff were kind of blown away by that too. Both of them were fairly new staff and weren't in relationship with G. And I just said, that's the key to all of this. And my biggest takeaway from a culture of gentleness and gentle teaching is that relationship is the key, and we have to help people feel safe and supported. So fortunately for me, Ed, if you want to show those next few slides, I, in my role at the Art Community Advocates, we were doing a fundraiser at the local Growlers game. And so I asked if he wanted to come and whether they could send somebody with him to provide some supports for him. And many of you who work in the field right now know that any extras are on the line because there's such a crisis in staff and staffing for many of the places that for people that we know live. And so I said, well, I'll just come and get him. And it was really interesting to walk into a home where people were so excited to hear that somebody had shown up to take G out. This is a classic G pose. He's shaking his fist at me, right? He often wants to wrestle with people. So he's shaking his fist like, come on, I'm going to take you on, right? And it's a big joke between us, but I'll often run up and give him a big hug and a couple of little fake punches to the gut. And it's makes him one of the most happiest things, right? So recognizing where people are at and what they need. But that home, I realized the impact that work had and the culture of gentleness had because people were so incredibly grateful. I brought him home. I lifted him out of the car into his chair, and people were like, oh my God. And he was so happy. And so were the staff. They had an opportunity to spend some time with somebody who cared about him. And the thing about my support for G was always that he knows what to do. He's a smart guy. And so about a third of the time that we were there, I would just let G wander around and he would be wheeling up and down. He ended up here in front of the Growler sign because he was too hot. It was a really hot sunny day, even though it was in June, and he wanted to get out of the sun. And so again, leaving people space to be who they are, often they will actually meet their own needs. But if I had been the person to say, no, you got to stay close to me, I got to stay close to the tent, this is what needs to happen, I'm sure he would have been upset with me. But we have to find ways to support people in ways that let them communicate and be in relationship with us and trust that they're going to find what they need in the process of making sure that that's there. So I've been lucky enough, I've had a couple of other coffee dates with G, and in the new year, I'm hoping that we actually can do a regular monthly meeting because I miss them like crazy. So COVID really put a damper on all of that. It's only in the last few months that I've been able to see him again. So for me, this idea of a culture of gentleness is really how do we look at who people are, make some adjustments, but just keep showing up for them unconditionally, whatever might happen, and recognize often that when people are struggling and behaving in ways that are difficult for us, that we need to find ways to support them that are different than what is typical. Because at the end of the day, you get to have a relationship and an experience where people get their needs met and you get your needs met too. And it is a back and forth for people.
Beautiful, Sheldon. Two thoughts came to mind. The first one I'll say is my silly one, is looking at you at the Growlers game. I think you gave as many shits about being there as you would have at the car place as well. But
Agreed.
Going and being with people in community is what's important to you and what is valued. And the other thing, knowing your journey and knowing how long G has been so impactful in your life and you and his, it brings me back to this notion of the central purpose that we are really trying to highlight today, that the central purpose that we have in the lives of others is to nurture, teach, and sustain, right? Sustaining kept coming through my mind as you were talking, sustain connectedness, right? Companionship and community, and not only your own personal relationship with G, but the notion of a culture of gentleness is about what do we do to sustain that. I'm so happy to know that even in the years since you've had direct daily involvement with the individuals who work in G's lives and provide him that support every day, that you're able to come back and notice that there's a sustaining nature of that culture, and that culture is intentional. These are things that we have to constantly work at, right? And these are the things that we have to keep moving forward. But I love knowing that you can go back and see the evidence of the good work that's been developed over time. And so I love the notion of looking at not only your sustaining relationship, but G's ability to be in a sustaining relationship in a supportive environment as well.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, the time between when I was a supervisor there, when I worked for MORC, I would spend some time with him. But prior to COVID, the last 5 years, I've been traveling all over the world and haven't really seen him. It would have been almost 6 or 7 years since I'd seen G. But the thing I know about my relationship with G, just like I know it's true for a lot of other good relationships in my life, is if you show up again, it's like putting on an old pair of boots, right? They fit perfectly. And you can just continue on from where you were. And it's one of the things I love about that relationship.
I love it. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. Well, I'm going to introduce to you our last guest speaker and friend that we're going to share their story today. I have the privilege of sharing some information about my dear friend, Jen Hake. Those of us here in Michigan, we like to call her West Side because she comes from the West Side of Michigan. And she's just been a beautiful soul to meet along this journey. You're like an old pair of boots to me, girl. Just like Sheldon said, we don't get to see each other. We don't get to hug each other. We don't get to fake smoke cigarettes, pretend cigarettes when we want to be with people face to face anymore. But you are comfort and you are home, like so many of the folks I know that are participating in this today. But Jen Hake is currently employed at Life Circles, the PACE program. It's the program for all-inclusive care of the elderly. PACE's mission is to help older adults that meet criteria for skilled nursing care facilities remain at home with the appropriate level of support. Jen Hake is a behavioral health liaison who covers both PACE programs in Muskegon and Holland, Michigan, not the country. While at Life Circles, Jen received her coaching and training certification through Positive Approach to Care. PAC supports people living with dementia and their care partners to provide increased awareness, knowledge, and skills. Prior to working at Life Circles, Jen was an intensive case management team leader at Health West for individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities and chronic mental health care needs. While at Health West, Jen partnered with the Center for Positive Living Support and completed training to become a certified general teaching mentor and working with people trainer. On a personal note, Jen was able to utilize these skills as she journeyed with her family while her father was living with Lewy body dementia. Her professional and personal life combined in a way that created lived experience that helps better align with other care partners who are journeying, you're good, on their way with their loved ones through the aging process. I love you so much, Jen Hake.
Oh, thank you. The feeling's mutual. All right, well, let's see if I can keep my tears like just in my heart instead of out my eyes. So Ed, if you want to hit me up with the picture of my dad, that'd be super great. All right, so I was going to talk to you about the power of connection as it relates to others. And really awesome is it related to me and my dad and his journey through dementia. He got Lewy body dementia. It was 11 years ago now. And Lewy body dementia has a life expectancy of about 5 to 7 years. And he passed away 2 years ago. So he beat that 7-year thing, of course, because he's a pot off. That's what pot offs do. It was a crazy journey for us. Lewy body dementia is so much different than a typical Alzheimer's dementia. We get hallucinations and delusions and some Parkinson's symptoms. And if you try to treat the Parkinson's with medications, you get worse hallucinations. If you try to treat the hallucinations, you get worse Parkinson's. So there's really no way to win to keep the person feeling comfortable. Your body's falling apart, your mind is doing things that it's never done before. And for my dad, his hallucinations were scary, they were terrible, and they were traumatic. They usually involved children being treated poorly any way you can imagine. Lots of snakes, lots of threatening animals. He didn't have a happy-go-lucky hallucination life like some people can get. So it was really tough. And so we learned a lot about what kind of care my dad needed. And so just taking a look at the power of connection and how that helped our journey so much. I wanted to kind of define for you the differences between what connected care partnering looks like versus disconnected care partnering. So if we could go to the next slide. Oh, wait, can we go back to the other slide? Just for reference, this picture is with me and my dad and my son, Josh. And this was the last picture that I got with my dad. He died 2 days later. Can you even believe that? He looks happy, he looks good, he's upright. We were shocked to learn, like, this was a Sunday and he passed away Tuesday in the morning, 2 days later. And so it just goes to show, like, you never know when someone's gonna exit. And so, so much love to give. We just don't have enough time. So let's talk about connection and disconnection. So connection, I mean, there's lots of ways we can describe these things, right? But for the purpose of this little talk, I wanted to talk about connection as it relates to how I look at the person I'm supporting. And so when I'm feeling connected, I really have the ability to see things through two different lenses, through mine and through the person I'm supporting. I take the time to, like, figure out, what are they communicating? I get curious. Why are they doing that? What's their unmet need? It isn't about me. It isn't about how I feel about what they're doing. If I'm truly connected, I'm trying to figure out what sort of communication is coming through the words I hear, through the actions I see. A disconnected care partner can look a lot different, because a disconnected care partner really just can see through the care partner's lens, only through my lens. I can't really see what it would be like for the person, just how that person impacts me. And so when we think about, like, I love to listen to people talk about the people they support, because I can tell if they're connected or if they're disconnected. And to give you a few examples, as it relates to personal care, you might hear a staff person or a loved one say, oh, they're so aggressive. They're scratching, they're hitting, they're yelling. Right away, I know, like, the way they're describing that is through their own experience, because the person's coming at them, the person's scratching them, and the person's yelling at them. So that's how they see it. That's how they describe it. If I was really connected with that person, I might describe it like, that person's feeling really defensive. They don't want me in their space, so they're trying to get me out of the way. And it's interesting how documentation goes, because the person gets labeled as the aggressor, when in many circumstances, staff is the aggressor. We're not trying to be aggressive. It's just the reaction that the person is having shows that they don't want us in that space. They don't want us in that intimate space. We maybe don't have the relationship to be there quite yet. We don't have the trust to be there quite yet. And so when we keep going, we're the aggressor. We don't ever document that. We just say that somebody was really aggressive. And so really getting the staff that I work with, and challenging myself too, to document, like, defensive during personal care, didn't want staff in their space. The person was blocking staff or scratching staff, like, describing it more accurately from the perspective of that person receiving care is just, number one, helps us nurture so much easier. If I feel like I'm working with a defensive person versus an aggressive person, I feel a whole lot safer. I need to slow it down. I need to back up a little bit, give a little bit of space, try a different approach, because I don't want that person to feel defensive or to feel unsafe. Another situation you can see connected language pop up is maybe somebody won't sleep in their bed. We have a lot of people that will maybe want to sleep in recliner chairs. They just want nothing to do with their bed. And, you know, really well-intended staff might move that bed from the bedroom to the living room and, you know, come up with all of these different ways to help make that an easier transition. And then you might hear, well, that person we're taking care of is just really stubborn. They've got an excuse for everything. We've eliminated all excuses, right? The connected caregiver you might hear from them that bed is not a safe place for them. It doesn't matter if the bed's in the living room or in the bedroom. It's just not a safe experience there. There's histories and memories in that bed that sleeping in the recliner is a lot safer. And so as we start to get more connected, we really learn and understand more why someone does what they do. You know, the last example I wanted to give for this one was a person with MS who's trying to complete some personal care tasks or get themselves dressed. I can't even tell you how many times I've heard well-intended staff. I mean, they just haven't been supported the right way so that they can look at the situation the best way possible. You know, there's nothing wrong with these staff. They just need better mentoring or they need more support. But you can hear like, they're manipulating me. They can do this. I saw them do this yesterday. They just want me to do more for them. They don't want to do what they know how to do. And when I hear that sort of description, it's very disconnected. You're not understanding like the ebb and flow of MS, the ebb and flow of like mental health, and how sometimes my adaptive skills take a hit when I'm really upset or really down and sad. Sometimes my physical body just won't move the way that it moved yesterday. And so I need more help with buttoning or with shoe tying. And so really paying attention to how we talk about the people we support. Is it in a connected way or more of a disconnected way? So just for me to wrap up, if we could go to the next slide, I just wanted to share some personal examples about my dad and what we learned about him and his journey. We kind of talked about these 2 points already, so let's just keep going. Oh, you can go back. There you go. One of the things my dad would say all the time is, I want to go home. I want to go home. He lived in a nursing facility, but it was like really cool. It wasn't like a typical nursing home with a long hallway and a lot of doors. It was like a huge house that Chip and Joanna Gaines must have made. That was so great. I loved it. It was the best. It was homey. He had his own room, his own bathroom, lots of shared spaces. But even before he moved there, when he was at his home, he would tell us he wanted to go home. And the more connected we got with him and the more we understood what that meant, the more we knew this wasn't a place for him. This was a feeling for him. He wanted to feel like he was home. And so that really changed the way we responded to him. We responded to him in more of a connected way. Dad, I know you want to be home. Home is wonderful. You know, we aren't home, are we? And letting him process that and be sad about that and reflect with him, and not just trying to distract and get him onto something else, but to really listen to his grief about not being the person that he used to be. He's different, and he can tell he's different, and he just wants to go home. He wants to go back to a place that was normal for him. So we knew he wasn't feeling safe when he wanted to go home. So we kind of had this joke, because I mean, he wasn't cognitively, you don't take as big of a hit with Lewy body cognitively. It's more just the psychiatric symptoms that come on. So he was very good with his memory. He was very good with who we were. We would blame Lewy for a lot of those things. So we would blame Lewy ruins everything. Lewy has ruined retirement. Lewy has ruined Christmas. Lewy ruins a lot of stuff. And so that kind of helped reframe for him and helped him connect to us. Like, we felt bad too. We didn't want it to look this way. And just reminding him how glad we were that he was with us. That seemed to really help that feeling of wanting to be home. The next thing he would do is he would stare outside. So windows, mirrors, anything that had a reflection became a portal to hell, basically. And we could get a lot of hallucinations. My mom was super great. She was would put glass, like foggy glass contact paper on mirrors and windows and stuff at home. So you'd look in the window and you'd be like, whoa, that's so creepy. But when he moved to his nursing facility, you could see him seeing stuff outside. And we knew like if we didn't shut those blinds, that stuff was going to ooze on inside. And so being connected with him meant when he started paying attention to stuff we couldn't see, we needed to take action. We needed to interrupt with relationship. We need to be like, oh, dad. And when you get that head turn over to where you are, shut those blinds and get that portal shut up so that it's not going to cause us more trouble later. A disconnected caregiver might not do anything. They might not even notice that's going to be a risk. That's a warning sign that, whoa, we got to take action. So it's really cool when you get that relationship with somebody, like what Sheldon was talking about, and they're having a hard time, when you can connect and be like, you are miserable. Oh my gosh, let me help. That makes all the difference. So the last thing I wanted to say is that he would sometimes say forbidden words. My dad, he swore sometimes. It was always good timing when he would swear. It was always at the right people too. He was a masterful man at putting someone in their place, and he did it so great. And so he never swore at me though, ever, never. I was just like always treated really well. And one day I was watching him while my mom was at Mackinac Island, and I got some pretty bad words thrown at me, like the big mother F-bomb words was thrown at me. And I was just like completely shocked. And so what I know for being a good care partner is I have to stay updated on what sort of education there is about brain change and why do people say forbidden words when they're really mad. And so I don't know if I have time yet, but I'm going to try to go really fast because I want to save time for questions too. But when we are really experiencing stress and brain change, or somebody is having dementia, we lose our prefrontal cortex. So we lose like lots of logic, decision making, and we also lose our left temporal lobe, which is where we store our vocabulary. So vocabulary, speech production, and speech comprehension. As we were younger, we were taught that swear words, forbidden words, aren't okay to say. So they got stored in a different cabinet. They got stored over here in the right temporal lobe. So that means racial comments, sexual comments, forbidden words, big swears, they got stored over here. So when someone gets really escalated and bad, logic and vocabulary shuts down, and all someone can grab is mean words. And so I know that when my dad's swearing at me, that it has nothing to do with me. That has to do with the way his brain is changing because he was really stressed out. And so in the moment, I got my little finger out and I started correcting like a disconnected caregiver. And I soon realized like, oh my gosh, that's not what my dad needs. My dad needs distraction. My dad doesn't need education or finger pointing because those are the only words he can grab right now. And so what I need to do is distract. And I was like, oh my gosh, we got to get milk. We have no more milk. We have to go to the store. And he was like, all right, well, where's my shoes? It was just that quick. And so just looking back on how I was able to be in relationship with him and be connected with him, it really made his journey easier and my journey easier because interventions weren't done from my perspective. They were done from his perspective and what his needs were. So if I went over, I didn't think 10 minutes was enough time anyways, but I did my best. So that wraps up my little spiel about connected when we're giving care to others.
Oh, Jen Hake, you never disappoint, my friend. Always a pleasure to listen to you. Here's what I love is it was many years ago. It was pre-Lewy and all of that I was able to learn from you on our mutual journey together about difficult behavior, challenging behavior is about a person craving connection, not correction. And how we often come in as the parent, the caregiver, the friend, the finger wagger, right? We come in, our notion is to correct and to be able to take a pause, right? To lower that demand and tend to look at behavior truly through the lens as an opportunity and a need for connection, not correction. I'm talking about this when we're talking about our family members, when we're talking about our colleagues and our coworkers, when we're talking about that person that just makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up when they walk, like, woof, right? Let's take that pause and think about what can we do to forge connection, and not always move toward correction. And you've been telling us about this for years and years and years. And then to have your personal journey and the story of your dad, which I know was not an easy one, to be represented in such a beautiful and meaningful way, and for it only to feed into the work that we do. It just really goes to the notion of just trusting that we're here to provide that connection and those opportunities for others. Thank you so much.